Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Tara.
I'll introduce us, I guess. Even though, I mean, again, we don't know what episode you guys are starting with. So, hi, I'm Tara Sands. Joined by. Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say my name.
Say it. Say it better than I do. Yeah.
I'm Steve Yurko. That was poor. Too late.
What were you going for with that? Was there
No, that was me acting.
That was an acting
doing
choice.
A bad read, but on purpose.
Steve Yurko, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. Have you ever been on a game show?
No, but I sat in the audience. The Price is Right. Man,
Really?
I gotta say, I like that kind of live TV. Or I don't know, I've never, I never sat in the audience of a talk show or anything. But it's like similar. But wow, it's like you gotta get there super early, wait in a long line. They take all your stuff, like they take your phone and stuff and everything.
Yeah,
and
it's hardcore.
And I'm like, nah, this ain't worth it.
I had a friend. I was at her apartment one day, and she was serving us like what those little pizza, like Tostino pizza rolls or something, like like fun and trashy, and on like really nice china. And I was like, I'm like, wow, this is really nice. And she's like, oh, I want it on Price is Right. And then she started pointing to like really random things around her apartment that were all winnings from The Price is Right.
I wonder if she remembered how much she said they were worth.
Yeah, I bet she knows exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That is a different podcast that Steve and I will host soon called Price is Right Flashback.
Game show flashback.
Game show flashback.
I don't know.
But
What's one more podcast at this point?
Yeah, you have so much free time. So our guest today is Jason Bergenfeld. Jason will be our first interview who was not a 4Kids employee, which I'm excited about because he kind of had an outsider's view on the company, but he worked really closely with them as an employee of Taj Productions. We'll remind you during his interview how Taj was involved in all of this. We'll let him do the heavy lifting and the detail of all of that. But he's a great guy. I worked really closely with him for many years. So I'm excited. This is a nice reunion for me. I'm excited for you to meet him. And now to the business.
For sure, yeah. Let's get down to business. Of course, as always, our website is 4Kids Flashback with the number 4.com.
We should see what happens if you type the letters. Probably nothing. Again, I've said this before, but it would be funny if
It'd be funny if we all just had
Please
the
don't buy
URL
that
for
domain.
Oh, okay.
You know what? I bought. Let's just, again, right after this, I'm going to purchase it so you guys can't do any damage to it.
But if you need any more info about our show, you could start there, and it's got links to everything. Of course, it links to our Patreon, where if you kick us a little cash back there, you could get some cool perks like getting episodes ad-free, a week early, some bonus content. And, if you want to kick us even more money and then have something to show for it physically, a link to our store as well. And we got our logo on a few things. You want to put it on a mug. If you really want to rock it on your cell phone case, by all means.
Go for it. We will not stop you. Yeah, so you can do that. You can also subscribe, rate, and review on the many apps you can find our podcast on, and we will always appreciate that. Tell a friend. They'll thank you. Or maybe not. And maybe you didn't even want to be friends with them anyway. And that will be your indication that this is not worth being, worth your time.
Or maybe they don't understand your passion for anime dubbed for kids back in the early 2000s.
Exactly. And who needs them? Who needs that person?
You'll find others. There are dozens of us. There's dozens of us.
This show is now a meter for how you decide who you're friends with. On that note, I'd like you all to meet my friend Jason Bergenfeld. Here he is. Our Our guest today is someone I'm so happy to be reunited with after a gazillion years. I think that's the technical amount of time. His name is Jason His name is Jason Bergenfeld. He, you know what? I'm going to actually read exactly what his LinkedIn description says. He was a writer, voice director, and line producer at Taj Productions. He is our first guest who is not actually a 4Kids employee, which I'm really excited about because you had a little bit of an outsider view into everything, which I think is valuable. As are you. You are a gem. Welcome to the show, Jason Bergenfeld.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here. This is my first podcast that I've been on.
Is this your first interview about this topic?
It's my first interview about this topic. Now, years ago, I was on a couple of podcasts, like when I worked at Viz Media. We can talk about that also.
We definitely will.
And so I did a couple, and yeah, but I was mostly sort of like secondary on those podcasts.
You are primary here. You're primary primo guest.
Thank you.
Your name is going to be in the episode title. We're going to think of some clever, catchy name for the title. Oh, you just wait, JB.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right. Jason?
Yes.
Tell us a little about your life. So before starting work at Taj, I know you were already working in the TV film industry. Can you tell us what you studied, how you got involved, and if you always had an interest in the entertainment business?
Oh, I definitely always had an interest in entertainment, and it's basically what the foundation of my schooling was. So I had made short films a little bit in high school, and I did some summer programs at Boston University, and my goal was always to go to NYU Film School. So it was always that was the focus, and I got there, and I learned, oh yeah, there's like 1,000 film majors. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I really want to be in the film program. Too many people, too much competition. And a friend of mine was like, have you tried the dramatic writing program? And I'm like, no. And so I applied to that. And that was with a focus on playwriting and screenwriting. And I did that. And I studied that. And I did that for about like my junior and senior year. And as I was about to graduate, and I was living at home on Long Island, I would be woken up on Sunday mornings by my father, who would circle ads in the New York Times classifieds. So for all you kids listening, before there was Indeed and all these other job sites, there was a newspaper that listed jobs. And my father would circle some jobs that he thought I would be good at. And one was a production assistant at a place called Taj Productions. And I sent in a resume. I don't even remember if I emailed it, because I don't know if email was used, but it wasn't necessarily when you were looking for a job.
Right.
And I sent in, and I got called for an interview. And I went in, and taking my father's advice, I put on a suit, and I went to the interview, and I got to this very weird, dusty office in a part of Manhattan that I had never even been to before. It's actually, Taj was on 28 West 27th Street and Suite 906. And yeah. And it was the flower district. And so there was people that selling wholesale flowers and also knockoffs of toys. And
right.
Yes. And so I had the interview. That's where I met Larry Juris. And the owner, and he said, yeah, we're doing this show called Pokémon. Have you heard of it? And I was like, they were already early in production. I think they were like 35, 40 episodes in. I was like, no, I didn't hear of it. And they were like, well, you know, and this is the show that in Japan gave kids seizures. And I went, oh, I heard of that. So I was like, yeah, I've heard of that. And he was like, okay. And he got an idea from my resume and my experience as a writer. And he explained to me what the job would entail. And I thought, okay. And I figured, I walked out, and I'm like, I'm not getting this job. And then I got another call a week later. I want you to come in and meet my partner, Michael Hagney. So I came in with thankfully I had two suits. So I wore the second suit. and I met with Michael.
Oh, that's why they call you Two Suit Jason.
You got it.
That's the origin.
Why.
Oh, sorry. So you met Michael. I apologize.
That's okay. No, it's fine. I met Michael, and Michael was really nice, and he was like asking me because my resume had all like my list of student films that like, oh, what's this about? And wondering, the kind of the stuff I did, and I had that interview, and I went, well, I'm not getting this job, and because I don't know, it was just kind of like. I don't know why it just didn't seem like a great interview, or it just didn't feel like we were like really jiving in an interview. Mm-hmm. And so I left, and then a week later I get a call, you got the job. And the first day I was told by Larry, go out and clean the back room. There was this back storage room.
What was your job title? What were you hired for? Because I want to hear why you were cleaning. But
what
was the job you were interviewing for?
Production assistant. And the way, Larry had sold it to me was, yeah, you'll be doing all these like PA stuff. These really kind of like, you'll answer phones. You're doing all the grunt work. But if you want to be a writer, you can be a writer here. If you want to be a voice director, you can be a voice director here. So he'd given me the impression that, yes, there is upward mobility at this job.
But day one, you were cleaning. Sorry, go back to that.
So day one, I'm cleaning, and I find in the back room a bag full of resumes. And these were all the other, what I presumed was all the other applicants who had applied for the job. And my curiosity got piqued, and I'm reading these resumes. Like, these people are real. These people really have experience.
Quentin Tarantino.
Paul Thomas Anderson. What? And so after that, I said, like, yeah, you hired. I kind of like years down the line, I said, well, what was it? And he said, well, you wore a suit. And that really said a lot about how prepared you were going to be for the job. Wow.
So, do you know that Howard Stern, I think, has a similar story that he wore a suit. I hope I'm remembering that correctly, but it just shows initiative or something to people.
It does. But in this day and age, because years later, when I went to Viz Media, before the interview, they said to me, don't wear a suit. Now that also tells you the difference between New York and California. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead there, but that kind of tells you the different mentalities between both places.
Well, I was gonna say at Taj, you never wore a suit again. Like I remember how y'all dressed at Taj. There was no suit wearing happening. Yeah. No, certainly not. No, it was basically come as you fell out of bed. And that is basically what we did. And so there was no dress code at all. It was super casual. Now, so you said they had already started production on Pokemon when you started. Is that right? So, gosh, I remember you being there from day one. So I'm mistaken. But
yeah. So I came in and they were recording at Buttons, and I would go up to Buttons to check to watch production to see what the show was about, and also drop. Basically, it was kind of like being an errand boy. Oh, you should go see what they're doing, and by the way, take all these tapes with you, and then go pick this up while you're doing that. And so that's basically where I met. I met you, and I met Eric Stewart and Veronica Taylor, and I met all the people.
And Megan Hollingshead.
And and Megan Hollingshead.
Who, when I mentioned that I was interviewing you, she lit up and she said her favorite thing is all the obscure television and film references you two would throw out to each other.
Oh, absolutely.
And she just raved about how funny you are. So.
Oh, thank you. Oh, okay. That's very sweet. See, I love this because this is basically, it's kind of like, it is like Facebook for all the voice actors or people like myself who are kind of not in the business anymore and are like being able to reconnect. Because, I see you guys on Facebook, but I don't necessarily, we don't actually connect. But so this is a great thing. Yeah, but I digress. Yeah.
So
yes.
You're running back and forth this was before, we should point out, before Taj had its own recording booth.
Correct.
They outsourced the recording portion of the work to a studio called Buttons.
Right.
And during this time, were you guys in construction on the booth during this time?
It was not as of yet, but it was definitely about to happen. And so for that to go down was pretty intense because because when you're dealing with construction or contractors, it's never an easy process. You're basically at them to go faster. They're at you for more money. And I was kind of in the middle of that. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty jarring and a pretty big wake-up call for a 22-year-old kid who basically was hanging out at this office and basically had to watch this be constructed. And it was a pretty jarring thing. And I also learned a lot of things about studio construction. Honestly, what not to do when you're building a studio. And the walls were parallel, which is not a great thing to have, and there weren't a lot of sound buffering that was put in. Mm-hmm. And so I had sort of in a way come to learn, this is not how to build a proper studio. But if you're doing straight voiceover and you're not doing music, you're just doing straight voiceover, you just need a soundproof box. Yeah. And that's basically what they built was, here's a box with a soundproof door. And it wasn't all that soundproof. I mean, there are times where, like, I know Jim would come out and be like, people
Jim
were
Malone.
talking. Jim Malone, sorry. It's okay. Jim Malone would come out and, people were talking by the door. The door's not entirely soundproof. So it'd be like, oh, could you lower your voice? So it wasn't like the most structurally sound studio, but it did the job. Yeah. And the second room that Taj built also there was a much better construction, but it was much better. It had a buffer.
What was in that room?
So that room, there were two rooms. So that room was a larger room, which was called like the client room. And I guess because it had a couch for a client to sit in and it had like a desk for the director to sit at. It was a really nicer setup. It was orange. I don't know if you remember, it was orange.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that where I primarily recorded then?
You did do a lot of recording in that room. And I remember, and you were recording with me, and I remember recording with Armin.
Right.
Armin
another engineer. Yeah. Oh, so you were running back and forth to Buttons. Were you also running back and forth to 4Kids?
No, I wasn't going to 4Kids because they hadn't built their studios. Well, they hadn't done much of it. Well, we were using delivery services to send stuff to 4Kids for mixes to be reviewed. Mm-hmm. And it was going directly to them. So I never had to go to their offices. But one place I did have to do deliveries was to Michael Hegney's house, because Michael lived 3 blocks away from where I lived at the time. So I would have to basically I had to take VHSs to him. So after a long day, I'd have to walk 3 blocks out of my way, drop stuff at his place, and then I would be able to kind of finally go home and rest.
Got it. So so at this point, and I guess we should just just to fill anyone in who's unclear of the timeline, 4Kids did not have their own studios at this point. They hired Taj Productions, Larry Juris and Michael Hegney, to be in charge of the recording of Pokemon, and you were handling the recording and post-production. Is that right?
That's correct. So no, so the recording and the mixing were done. The mixing. So the show was recorded at Taj, and it was also mixed at Taj. And then so those mixes were then put onto what's called the DA88. It looks like an old 8mm videotape, but it has capacity of 8 tracks. So you had so you had the mixed track and then the separated audio stems for sound effects and the Pikachus, and all the Pokemon were laid out separately. And so those were then, that tape was delivered to 4Kids, who would then basically lay that into the video.
Got it.
And that's what went to, and then that's what was delivered to WB or other networks.
Got it. What did you think of Pokemon when you first saw it? Were you an anime person before that or no?
I wasn't a big anime person. I mean, I used to watch G-Force and there was Voltron growing up. So there was all those shows, but I never was like a super anime person. And then when the show came out, I remember it was airing on what was WB, or as we called it in New York, WPIX at 7 a.m. During the week. And I remember hearing Larry tell me, "We're doing great. We beat the Today Show." And I'm like, this is awesome. This is probably the best this is going to do. How else?
Suck on that, Bryant Gumbel. Willard Scott who?
And then it just started to build. And I wasn't watching it because I wasn't the kind of person who was taking it home and have to watch it and see it. It was like once an episode was done, it was done, and I didn't really want to take a look at it again. Yeah.
So you started moving up the ranks at times.
Yes.
I mean, it was a small office, but you what I kind of love about it is, I think there's a lot of false promises sometimes when you take the grunt work job. That he says you're going to get to do writing and directing, and it all actually happened there.
Yes, and that's what was really great. So within like a month or two, I was given a script to work on. And I remember the script, and it was about this, there was this other character who Ash and Misty and Brock meet up with who likes to take photographs of Pokemon. And I started trying to adapt it and not really getting a lot of information on really how to do it. I was kind of really thrown into the deep end, so to speak. And I experienced the tediousness that Michael had alluded to. And it really is. And I tried, and it was really hard. And in the end, the only thing that was left of that script that I can call my own was the title. And
what was it?
The title was Pokemon Paparazzi.
I do remember that title.
So, yeah. And then there was another episode later on. There were two other episodes that I got to try to adapt. And one was where Professor Oak has all these Pokemon like in his like ranch or something. And that too, I got to get the title. And that title was Showdown at the Poke Corral.
That was you. I'm glad that's such a Hagney title.
I know.
So that's interesting that one's you.
Yeah, so that one was,
I love that title.
And then what a lot of my friends would point out later on was when the VHS copies would come out, that was the subtitle on one of the VHSs, Poke Corral. So I was like, all right, there we go. That's it. I'm all set.
You made it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the name in lights right there.
It really was.
Title on the VHSs.
That was one of quite a few we kind of had. But definitely that was like the first piece. And then when I wrote the script, Larry paid me for adapting the script. Even though like 2% of what I wrote got used, I still got a check from him for writing it. And I was like, this is my first writing job.
Aww.
And I asked Larry afterwards, can you give me the check after I cash it? So I have it.
Oh, I love that.
So I have it somewhere. I don't know where, but I still have a check somewhere.
That's so cool. This is a good segue. Thank you for leading me into this. Jason
Pleasure.
is one of the people that kept some stuff from back in the day. He was kind enough to send me an email with. He saved the first 4 seasons, all of the Pokemon scripts, and it's awesome. Did you was there any foresight at that time? You're like, oh, I'm going to want these one day, or is it just a happenstance that you have that?
It was a little bit of both. I think I kind of wanted to have it because, just as like a memory, as like a keepsake. And also there might be, even though like there's like the episode, like the 1 or 2 episodes that I worked on, that's something I could say, yeah, okay, maybe this little bit here, I can remember I wrote that little bit or something like that. And, but it was just a smart thing to just have.
Yeah.
And yeah. And there was a couple of things. There was even like some schedules of like when I had to like book people in, because after the writing happened and my script writing days kind of went away, I went back to being more of an administrative coordinator. And part of that is scheduling all the actors. And it was quite an ordeal because we didn't have smartphones. We had email, but nobody was checking email until they got home.
Right.
So you had to call everybody, and you were leaving a lot of voicemails, and you're trying to do this, and they're getting back to you. And it was really a really arduous, an arduous process. So the fact that I had one of those, I couldn't believe it, like scheduling somebody in and moving somebody around. And yeah.
So what would you do? You would count how many lines they had and then schedule them according to how fast they worked and then how difficult the lines were, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So depending on the actor, certain actors, usually it was 20 lines an hour. And some actors can do those 20 lines an hour. Some can do 30 in an hour. And you kind of knew how quickly they were going to go. And you would schedule them accordingly, basically. And I would say, so you had actors who were doing like 3-4 hours per episode, because Ash always had about at least 100 lines an episode, 80 to 100 lines. Rachel Lillis, she did Misty and Jesse, so that's 2 characters. Eric Stewart did Brock and James, that's also 2 characters. And if you had a supporting character who was just there for that one episode, like some young Pokémon master who wants to, battle Ash and then learn something, then he's there. And that character's there for like 4 hours of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I loved looking at your old scripts because I was comparing the scripts today to those scripts. And I couldn't remember if when the Pokemon themselves had cues, if it gave any description. Like today in our scripts, it will say like, Mr. Mime reacts, but it will say like happy to sad to confused. Back then, it only said react. So it definitely was more time consuming because the writer was not giving us any indication. Also the scripts now, they have like when even when the speaking people have the people with actual words have reactions like a oh or a it will say open or closed. It's underlined if it's a closed mouth or off screen it will indicate that. Our scripts were very rudimentary.
They were rudimentary, and when we weren't sure about it, we'd always just like, okay, let's reference the Japanese. And we would watch the Japanese and see what kind of react it was. And then kind of follow that.
Was Taj also doing stuff for Central Park Media at that time? Or was it? Okay.
Sorry. They were doing quite a bit for Central Park Media. And that was happening at another studio nearby called Sonomat. I think that was called Sonomat, I believe it was. Yeah. And that was like a one-man operation. This guy, Dan Rich, and he...
Right. Oh, that's right. That was Dan's company. I forgot about that. Dan, right. He's such a part of all of our... totally have to add him to the list.
Yeah, definitely. And so Dan was basically... he was the engineer, and he mixed it. He did everything. And he had this like little tiny studio, and he was a really nice guy. Could be grumpy, but he was a really nice guy.
Fun to drink with, for sure.
Yes. I didn't really do that much recording over at Sonomat. A lot of that was Jim Malone and Tony Salerno. So they worked mostly with this Dan. What I would do is, one of my other jobs is I would have to take that audio mix and then lay it over the original video. Not me personally, but at a post-production house. So my job would be to go with the person from Central Park Media, and we'd sit there and we'd just make sure that all the audio and the video are syncing together.
Yeah, I mean, I forget that there was so much Central Park Media production at that time. Those were much, I mean, Steve, I don't know how much you watched this when you were younger, but those were much truer adaptations. You know, again, you know, we get into the 4Kids, the changes and all that, but there was so much anime being dubbed in New York that was, I would guess, for the otaku, for the people who wanted a truer adaptation. A lot of it was filthy, but there was a lot of hentai happening. But again, it was a more accurate, more true to the original, I guess I should say. But working at Viz, I guess you encountered the difference between adapting for a kid's audience and sticking to a truer adaptation.
Oh, absolutely. It was really like night and day in terms of that, because at Viz, you're basically, you have the manga that's already been published. So you have your source material there. And when you're adapting that for the anime, it's a really, really detailed collaborative process, because you've brought in, you're working with an outside writer who's adapting the script, and you're also there's the producer, the production manager, that was my role, and then there was the manga editor and their insights. So they're all putting it together, and then once you kind of get a script and they understand the voice of what the show needs, then it's basically just between the production manager and then the adapter. But you do have that person to fall back on, that editor, who's really helpful in understanding the show.
Oh, I jumped way ahead, but because I have so many I have Viz questions, but I want to wrap up your time at Taj, because so at a certain point you actually started voice directing some of the episodes of Pokemon, and I believe maybe were you directing Tama and Friends as well?
I did some Tama and Friends, but at the time I was I came in to do Pokemon. Probably like I did a little bit. I would work with some characters. I would work with the great Ted Lewis, and I would work with Rachel Lillis, and I would work with Eric Stewart. I work with all these great actors, and I'd work with Maddie Blaustein, and we would So I would be able to kind of work with them and kind of get an even better understanding of the show and their characters as well. And then by about season 5, I was the sole voice director on Pokemon, just for season 5.
And did you know that 4Kids was building their own studios at that time?
Oh yeah, no, I knew it was happening, and it was just that was going on, because they were doing the Fox Box, they were having all their other Ultraman and Funky Cops and all those shows, yes, and Kirby. So I knew that they were definitely.
So it wasn't It wasn't shocking to you and Larry when because then they hired Jim, Malone, and Michael from Taj.
Right.
So that wasn't shocking to you guys, which is good. I mean, because it was a loss, I'm sure, to the company.
No, it definitely was, and the company definitely had to switch gears very quickly, and it was doing a lot more of I was doing a lot, whatever projects like Central Park Media had, Taj was jumping on it. So we did a show called The Ping Pong Club, which was about like these really horny teenagers, and then we did some hentai as well. I directed some hentai. So I did all these. So I did all these and some video games as well. We did one called Shadow Hearts. We did one called Air Force Delta Strike. So we did that, and then at a certain point, I was looking for more steady work, because it wasn't very steady at Taj, unfortunately. And I applied to Viz Media out in San Francisco.
And that's a big move, Jason.
It was a very big move. It was great because my parents were very encouraging. They were like, because nobody in my family ever leaves New York. It's almost like nobody in my family goes west of the Hudson River without actually like sending a note that says, "This is where I am. Don't worry, I'll be okay."
Well, the three of us in this Zoom call are all New Yorkers who live in LA.
Oh,
so,
all right.
Or California.
California. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, we all left home, which again, not easy to do. You know, we all went to school back east. We all, but the truth is if you want to work in this industry, which all of us do or did,
right?
There wasn't really an option, and especially with animation.
Correct.
You couldn't stay in New York. Yeah.
No, I couldn't stay in New York. And so Viz offered this great opportunity to come basically work for them. They saw Pokemon on my resume and they were like, "That's the guy."
Yeah.
And I remember the interview was basically, they were basically kind of, half of it was training me like, this is what you have to do to get the job. And that's basically it. And I got the job. And I moved out to San Francisco.
And you've been there ever since. So that was in, I'm looking at your thing. That was around 2004. Is that
correct? That's correct. Right. Yeah. 2004, I moved out to San Francisco and went to work at Viz Media. And actually it was two companies. It was Viz Communications and ShowPro. So that's the other thing. So
Steve's nodding. Steve knows about this stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not 100% on this, but ShowPro used to be like, that was like the anime division, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, yeah. Sorry, yeah, it was.
But maybe you could fill me in on this.
So Viz Communications was, they were doing a lot of stuff mostly with Shogakukan, and with Shueisha. With Shueisha, and then ShowPro was Shogakukan Productions. And they had a lot of stuff like Mega Man, and they had other licensed shows as well. Some of them, I think they had Doraemon, but Doraemon didn't come here. But I know that was one show they had. And
okay,
yeah,
that just explains my confusion real quick, because I remember Mega Man NT Warrior was ShowPro,
correct?
And I remember at the time when maybe it was rumors, or when it was kind of almost confirmed that Viz was getting the Naruto anime. The name ShowPro was thrown around a lot, and I think that was just a misuse of a name. It was because people thought, the people that, it's like Viz who distributed like Mega Man. It's like we saw ShowPro in the credits, so that's why I was thinking of that. So
yeah, they were basically like brother sister companies. And then it was ShowPro USA, and then Viz, and then they merged, and that's where Viz Media came in. So ShowPro USA was basically taken into Viz, and then even though we were all kind of working under the same roof, we were officially now all together and became Viz Media.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I jumped ahead because we didn't even discuss some of your time directing Pokemon, and the movies were going on around this time as well, because Jason, before this interview started, showed us he still has his Pokemon 2000 jacket, which we were given, and I stupidly do not have anymore. And he's holding it up, and he'll have to take a picture of it for us to post on the site. But yeah, so
it's got Pokemon the first movie on the back. It's
such a good jacket.
Pikachu all stitched in.
Such a good jacket. I didn't even ask you though. You were part of this huge project. What was that like? Like you started at Taj before you knew this was going to explode.
Right. And then the movie happens, and I'm working on the movie as a coordinator. I'm booking people, and and making sure, because that was being done at a much larger studio, I believe.
Yeah.
I think it might have been more of like a soundstage kind of studio, because it was.
Yeah.
That's one of the places where I didn't deliver anything to anybody, because I was because at the same time we were working on the TV show. So both were happening simultaneously. So I never got to see the production end of that. I was doing all my work at Taj. But the fact that, okay, this is going to be a movie was pretty amazing. And they had the premiere at the Ziegfeld Theater, which
it's not even there anymore.
I know it's not there. It was one of the best. All the premieres used to be there. It's one of the best single screen theaters in New York. And
beautiful theater.
And yeah, I mean, it's great to just go and like I went to see the movie and to see my name on a screen. And then my mother and my mother came with me as well. So and then she got to see that too, and it was really it was very exciting.
I remember all of us being there, and I just had this moment of realization, like, holy crap! Like, first of all, I'll probably never have a film premiere at the Ziegfeld ever again. Like,
right.
I better enjoy. It was one of my first like aha moments of what I was a part of, because again, there was no social media. I mean, do you ever think about like if we had made Pokemon during the age of Twitter or during everyone, it would have been much, much different.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a time where the hype or a lot of it happened was word of mouth. There was the trends were happening, and seeing that happen and seeing Pokemon become a household name just because of what's going on around us and not what's happening on a little screen or on a little phone. Yeah, I think it was one of the last, major shows or properties to do that with that amazing word of mouth.
And did you have, we talk about the New York of it all. And part of the reason I think some of us knew it was a hit was because we'd ride the subway or we'd take a bus and we'd see a kid talking about it or playing the game or wearing, did you have any fun experiences with that living in New York?
Yeah, there was definitely a few of those. A friend of mine had young children at the time, and they were really all into it. My brother would tell a colleague of his that I worked on Pokemon, and then he came back with a Pokeball and said, "Can you sign this for my friend's kid?" And I'm like, I'm just a voice director. He's like,
I know Veronica.
Yeah, that's right. So he was like, I would sign that, and I would kind of do that, and then where Taj was not like they were also selling a lot of bootleg stuff. So all the bootleg Pokemon
on the street, not Taj. Taj was not selling bootleg
stuff.
No,
not Taj.
There were vendors.
Yeah, sorry, vendors and people were just selling all this Pokemon knockoff stuff out on the street, and we would like walk past it and then say to ourselves, if people knew what we were doing up there, that would like blow their minds. It's like, we're the originators. You're just making copies.
Making copies. That's such a funny point. I didn't even think about that. You're right. That's exactly where we were working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I felt like we all, because again of the New York of it all, it's why I got to know all of you guys. Like that wasn't happening the same way in other cities, and the feel of Taj that felt like a family, and not that I didn't enjoy recording at 4Kids, because I did, but all of a sudden it felt corporate. And then when I would get to go back and work with you guys, I was like, oh, it's my Taj family. It was just a different kind of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of one of the reasons why I did, I stayed at Taj. I had, I wanted to continue to work with Larry, because Larry Juris, he was like one of the best bosses I could ever have. He did say, if you want to do this, you can do this. And there are times where, certain things did not come to fruition. But all in all, he basically kept his word as to like, you want to write? I wrote. You want to be voice director? Yeah, I was a voice director. And then I was the voice director on anything that would come in, all these other programs, a lot of Central Park Media stuff that came in that we did. And I directed that stuff. And yeah, it was fun. You won't find my name on some of it, but it was fun.
because this is a 4Kids podcast, do you remember any interactions with that company was growing at such a major pace? And I imagine they were learning, they hadn't had the dubbing background that Taj had had. Taj had already worked in dubbing. Were there any frustrations with working with a company growing so fast, or was it fantastic because there were so many people there? What was the day-to-day like for you?
There were some problems, working with things because scripts were not being fit to the lip flap, and sometimes things would be really off. And unfortunately, when things are off, then you have to stop and you have to rewrite stuff on the fly and see if you can make it work. And it's sometimes hard because you've only budgeted this amount of time for the actor.
Right.
And the actor, and the actor has to go to has another job somewhere, or they have an audition and they have all this. So the actor has given you their time, and you are trying to respect their time as much as possible to get this done in the time you said it would. And when it doesn't happen, that could be very frustrating. But there are also times where there's a fluidity where the actor is very happy to collaborate with the director and help rewrite stuff on the fly. And that's really the big joy of the voice directing, is when you're working on a script and you're like, well, this isn't working. And then you're just, you're passing ideas off, and we weren't under any sort of real strict guidelines, like, oh, if you're making Tama and Friends, you have to stick to this Bible. And it's like, no, it's about a cat and its friends. And we were having fun with that. And so we were able, to make that work. And in my last season on Pokémon, so Michael had stopped writing those scripts, and they were coming from 4Kids. And I was basically working with those scripts and having to tweak things on the fly.
Yeah. That collaboration was, to me, the most fun part of all of this.
Oh, definitely. Because
loved it.
Yeah, because you're all working together. You're all trying to put forth the best product. And there would be lines that were just, they would just really be really funny lines. There was one episode, I just want to go, I think it was we're called Spinner Rack Attack, and Brock falls down and he says a line which is he's screaming in pain, and he's like, the tray is on my hand. It's such a non sequitur. I wish I set it up better. It's such a non sequitur, but it's really good. But it was funny, and it's also the only Pokemon episode that my brother is. So yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
One of the major frustrations among the fans and the actors is that we never took notes of who played who. Literally, I just found out I was Mudkip recently because Darren Dunstan told me. I had no idea.
Right.
And he played it for. I didn't believe them until they played it for me. Did Taj keep those notes? Was it? Did that exist somewhere? Because again, if a Pokemon was in one episode and then didn't return for 50 episodes, how did you know who played it?
So we did have a spreadsheet that was made that sadly I don't have, which
that's
basically
gone, I bet. Yeah.
That is very gone. It was a spreadsheet which was, here's the Pokemon, here's the original name, here are the episodes, and then we put in which actor did this. So that's the only thing we really have at the time that would allow us to do that. And another thing that unfortunately that had happened also is, once an actor came in and recorded a bunch of a whole Pokemon, let's say it was like you were saying, it was a Mudkip episode, and Mudkip had 50 reacts, say Mudkip 50 to 100 times, that would create a library of sound effects.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately. And then what they would do is they would basically take those sound effects and use that in other episodes.
Yeah, we signed a contract that unfortunately, we were young and signed a vet contract, and they were legally allowed to do that. But it was a shame to not be paid for those episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was very sadly AI of the
Today, that does not happen on the show. If your character, if your Pokemon has 2 reacts, you are brought in and you do those reactions.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it's great. Lisa, you remember Lisa Ortiz, obviously. She directs the show. They keep copious notes about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because once in a while we would like fill in for a different voice actor if they couldn't come in. So maybe I would do Bellsprout. I remember doing like Bellsprout once or twice. Like I can't claim that I'm Bellsprout, but they're very clear about you can't claim that you do this voice unless this is you're the primary actor on there. It's great. It feels, it's just a different kind of approach to it. And it's also because you're working for the Pokemon company. So it's a different way of working.
That's great. That's like a sense of ownership and pride as a voice actor for the show itself. And then, that's great.
Let's get back to Viz. Sorry, because we keep going back and forth, and I love that, and I don't want to keep you forever, but I'm looking at all these cool projects at Viz that you were involved in, things like Naruto and Bleach and Nielsen rating stuff. I mean, this could be a different
that's
podcast. Really? I find ratings fascinating. So
okay, if you wanted to, that can be a Patreon episode.
Okay, that's a different episode. So what was the first title that was like you felt ownership over when you were at Viz?
So the first title I felt I had ownership of at Viz, and I still have great affection for this title, was a show called Hikaru no Go. And it was about this young boy who gets inhabited by the spirit of this Go master. Go being this like Japanese game that's like thousands of years, that's like hundreds of years old. And it looks like I think the game of Othello kind of came out of that. And so this show was a huge hit in Japan, and it's so beautifully done and beautifully drawn, and it's such a heartwarming story. And so they basically handed it over to me. And what was great was I ran with it, and they allowed me to. I didn't have to necessarily go through a huge approval process with Japan. They were just like, "Can you make it?" And I gave it with such great care, and we recorded with a studio in Vancouver called Ocean Studios, and they did such a great job, and they worked with other voice actors who were like, it didn't sound like English. Some of the characters in the show are Dutch, they're Korean, because it's a global show, and we brought in Korean actors, and they brought in Dutch actors, voice actors, and so it just had this real beautiful air of authenticity to it, and it's and it's a really, really good show, and oh man, I love it, and I wish other people could picked up on it. So yeah,
it was fairly popular in Japan, and I remember the manga coming over here, and I knew it was always a tough sell, but it's just a name I haven't heard in a while, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure the team behind that, or at the very least the artist, would go on to work on Death Note too. So I think there was always like, hey, if you like Death Note, this is Hikaru no Go. But it's really nice to hear someone talk about that title again. It's been a long time. It's nice.
And it's on Shonen. It's a Shonen Jump title, and so I think that was one of the things that kind of tried to help propel it. I didn't know the Death Note connection. That's really interesting to note.
It's the art. I'm going to do this so I don't seem like an idiot. I know for a fact that it's.
We'll Google while we podcast. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I handle all the nerd stuff here.
Okay. Well, that's okay, because I'm sure there are listeners that are also Googling, going, "Oh my God, is Bergenfeld saying the right thing?" I hope he's right.
It was his show.
Same artist.
Oh.
It's an artist and author collab, but yeah.
Is that a title that's still available, or is this lost media? Is it?
Oh no! The anime I'm not sure about. I'm pretty sure the manga is on the Shonen Jump app.
I think the anime, I could be wrong, but I think it's on Hulu.
Oh, good.
So
Okay,
I think it's available. I think it is available there, and so I highly recommend everybody just take a look at it. It's really good.
Yeah, I have to check that out. And I do love that you guys were dealing with the Japanese teams and the fact that the word manga came up at Viz, because I've asked many people at 4Kids if there were ever mangas around for them to get an idea of what was coming up, and it doesn't seem like that was going on there. Which, again, they were making the show for American audiences, so I understand it was a much different approach, but I can tell how happy you are talking about the process at Viz. So
yeah, it was really tremendous the way they just kind of, they took great care. And it's not just on that show, obviously, with Naruto and Bleach, all this tremendous care that went into the manga and the production. And yeah, you're basically being entrusted with this story, and you want to deliver the story as best as possible to the audience. And I think that's really the way I saw it. Like, you're a conduit for this story for the English speaking audience.
Were you traveling to Los Angeles for recording sessions at that time? I know there is a little bit of overlap on some of those shows. I know, like, Megan moved to LA and was working on some of those shows. Were you involved in a lot of that, the production part of it?
Yeah. I mean, I would come down to Los Angeles for Naruto recording sessions and Bleach recording sessions at Studiopolis. Shout out to Jamie Simone. How you doing, Jamie?
And Miley Flanagan. Oh.
Yes, that's right.
I met her for the first time on the last day of recording Naruto.
Oh, really?
And it was such an interesting date. And now I know her much better. We've seen each other many times. But what an interesting day to meet somebody.
On the last day.
Her last recording session.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
She's phenomenal. I could do another podcast just about Miley, but I love that you were involved in that production from early days. That's really just so cool. I mean, you've been part of these major franchises. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's cool. I mean, it's the kind of thing where now even though I'm removed from it, as I'm like a parent, and then I hear kids talk about it, like my friend, my kids, their friends would talk about it, and it's like, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I worked on that. Oh yeah,
well,
I did
and that's
that.
my question. Now, did your kids watch it, and do you ever like drop that P-bomb and be like, I voice directed those episodes? Because I'm shy about it, so I don't know if you are.
Oh no. I know when you're a parent, you really want as much. You really want as much like your kids to really think you're cool as possible. So that was like, yeah. So I was like knowing that like in my back pocket, in 20 years time, I'm going to tell my kids that I was a voice director on Pokemon, and then I'm going to show them this jacket, and so they'll know and they'll believe that I did. And yeah, like they were into it. And then I think as they sort of got older, and their tastes definitely changed and moved away from it, they were just like, it was just whatever. But my kids are, but the fact that I'm on a podcast right now does impress my kids. So I am very glad to be here for a number of reasons.
We're giving you street cred with your children. I love that.
I know.
If I can ever do that, yeah, that was for me the fun of working on Pokemon back in the day, is that I had little cousins who once they didn't think I was fun, I could then talk Pokemon to them, and then they liked me again. Yeah. Right. Or if they had cards, I could be like, I know what that is. Who else knows that? Yeah. What other adult knows that?
Yeah. I mean, and there was also one thing where Veronica was really nice. Like, she would do voice messages for friends who had kids. And I remember I had a bet with a friend, and I had a bet when the millennium started. Was it 2000 or 2001? And I had Veronica leave a message on my friend's answering machine, basically as Ash, saying, "Don't you know that the millennium starts in 2001?" Yeah.
Oh, it was such a good group. I and I'm really glad that a lot of us are reconnecting at these conventions. And I hope that they start including, I keep telling, I'm a broken record on this podcast. I keep making sure that you guys know how happy you made a lot of children. And, you're a big part of a lot of people's childhoods.
I'm so glad. And, and another piece is that I was actually at a convention. I was at San Diego Comic-Con when I was at Viz, and I was on the Naruto panel. And they were asking me questions about why did you change this? Why did this happen? And it was all for, obviously, it was, you're trying to air stuff on Cartoon Network. And I was, a little frustrated. And it kind of, it was souring me on being on a panel, because I just felt because, sometimes you feel attacked on a panel.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but at the end of it, a couple of people came up to me because I talked about Pokemon and they wanted autographs. And I thought that was the sweetest thing. And that really was like, I'm so glad that, that people understand where I'm coming from and what I was trying to do. And that I did give them this joy of their childhood. And I'm very glad that, I have that,
Yeah, I always say that we were kind of their de facto babysitters. Like when their parents were like, just go watch TV, go watch Pokemon. Like, and, so we were there. We were in these homes with these people, and they have such, it's nostalgia is very powerful. I mean, Steve, Steve grew up watching this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, basically a latchkey kid. But the Naruto thing, and I know because Naruto aired on Cartoon Network for a long while, and there was a TV edited version, but at the time, because One Piece was being dubbed at 4Kids, so I think there was so much skepticism with English dubs. I think Viz really went out of their way to be like, we're doing an uncut dub, don't worry, this is just so it could air on TV, but there will be an uncut dub. And if I could just remember some memories, I remember some Naruto fans on forums complaining about it's like, oh, they changed this one thing, and as a One Piece fan, I almost wanted to be like, are you kidding? hold our collective beer, which we can't even say it's beer, because like I just remember, like, as a One Piece fan, I was like, I would have. This sounds like an insult, but this is just my thought as a teenager. I'm like, it's like the Naruto fans don't know how good they have it. I would kill for this kind of this accurate and like true to the original dub.
Yeah.
It's so that to me that's funny. I'm like, like everyone's a critic and there's always something that's, you can't please everybody, but it's so funny to me when Naruto I truly felt Viz went out of their way to be like, it's like, what's going to make sure to stick the landing? And it's not like it was any hindrance to Naruto. Naruto was insanely popular, and it was insanely popular back then.
Exactly.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that. And that's probably also some people will be like, when am I ever going to be able to ask this question? So that's also kind of the point of this podcast too.
No, I get it. And it also put me in a position where it's like, now I'm never going to go to a sporting event and boo anybody, because when someone puts you puts you at your job and says, well, why are you doing this? It can be it can be really, really frustrating. But thank you for saying that. Cause I mean, Viz was about being as authentic as possible. And all they were doing was just taking a bit of blood out of the show. That was their problem. There was like too much blood. So we took blood out. That's it.
Yeah. No big deal. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then again, not everyone's on the internet. The people that are complaining about that are probably on the internet too.
Right.
I just remember Viz being, very upfront about what they were doing with the series, and like it's the what's the phrase here with like the very few voices,
the loudest or
yes,
the one we'll remember as soon as we're done with this that phrase. There was some speculation that 4Kids was bidding on Naruto, and it's such a funny thing to think about what that show would have been in different hands. And we have not asked an acquisitions person yet if that is true. We haven't gotten that answer yet. But what a crazy world this would have been if that would have been a 4Kids production.
I think I heard that same rumor as well. And I think one of the jokes was, if they had taken Naruto, they would have cut so much out, they would have had to call the show Nar. Like that's basically what 4Kids would have done. And but that was their thing. They were basically appealing to they were trying to get it on at a certain time, at a certain day, where you basically can't show much of anything.
Yeah, no, it would have been for a different audience. Did you have to deal with those kid vid, they call them kid vid rules? Is that a big part of your job, having to decide what to cut?
Well, so we did a show called Blue Dragon, and this was another show Viz acquired, where they were trying to also make it appeal, but they for Cartoon Network, and it had a lot of it had young characters. Some of them had ample bosoms, and then so we had to actually go and shrink it, and they had to minimize it because there was cleavage or there were certain things. It was really messed up. So they so there's a show that's we want this to be as popular as possible, but we can't show anything that looks like this.
Right.
So then you have to go through all these approvals of making sure that it's going to work, and then having to explain again, no, Cartoon Network, it wants to air this, and it has to be a certain way. So that was the only time where we really had to get down into the nitty gritty with those rules. And then, yeah.
So your time ends at Viz, and you've had some other really interesting jobs since then, but I am focused on getpocketwise.com. What is that, Jason? Tell us what that is.
Okay, so Pocketwise.
And then we'll make sure we spell out the website for you.
No, you don't need to do that. No, Pocketwise was a very short-lived concept.
Oh, never mind.
It's okay. It's okay. It was a short-lived concept about a T-shirt where have a pocket, but the pocket was large enough to fit an iPhone. But then the problem was the weight of the phone would pull down the shirt, and then it really wouldn't come out very well. And so I kind of just moved past that. And so Pocketwise.
So don't go to that site,
don't go to that site.
So
please.
You would have had to have a really reinforced pocket to hold your phone there.
Yeah.
But I like the idea. It's a good Shark Tank idea.
Yeah, that's what people kept telling me. You should go on Shark Tank, and then I think that led to my parents constantly watching Shark Tank with visions of me being on there. But because they got used to seeing my name on television, they thought, oh, he'll be on any show. Let's get him on Shark Tank.
That's right.
Do
you have aspirations of going back to anime or that world at all, or not really? Are you done? You're kind of done.
You know what? I guess it would be nice on some level, but a lot of my time as a parent and my other businesses kind of take up that time. So I can't really donate. I can't really put forth that time anymore to do that.
Can you tell us what your other businesses are? These top secret ideas that we will see on Shark Tank one day?
No, it's not too big. I work in property management, so that.
Oh, okay. That does take up time. Yeah,
it takes up a lot. It takes up a lot of time. It's not as exciting, but it is definitely time consuming.
Well, we are so grateful for you sharing your time with us, because now that I know you have all these time-sucking jobs and parenting and all of that. So thank you, Jason. Oh my gosh, it was so great to see you.
Oh, it was great to see you, and pleasure meeting you, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I hope your kids think this is really cool.
They definitely do.
That Jason Bergenfeld, he's so cool.
Our dad is the coolest. He got interviewed for a podcast about Pokémon.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, no one says cool anymore. They're like, we ruined it.
What do they say? I could see you being very into the kid catchphrases of the day. Like, that's so sus. Do they still say sus?
Oh, they say sus. They say, I don't hear mid a lot, but that's something kids I know say now.
What does that mean?
Mid. It's like meh.
Meh? That's the new meh?
I think mid is the new meh. Or I think at least that's how I interpret it. I don't know. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head some of the other ones, but But yeah, I hear.
Because I know you're a word person like I am, because Jason will sometimes post, we both play a game daily called Spelling Bee on the New York Times app, and we both try to use dirty words that they will not recognize as real words. So
They are the worst.
The worst.
I could write the word Texan, and they even thought the word Texan was not a word.
Well, no, because that's capitalized.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's why. Jason, we're going to have a spelling bee tutorial right after this. I did not realize.
I'm a bit new to spelling
Oh,
bee.
we're going to have to talk about this. Listen, this interview is anything but mid.
Thank you.
We're going to let you go, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that Jason Bergenfeld. That San Francisco treat. Yeah, no, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I completely misremembered him being there from day one, I guess because I had been working at Buttons and not at Taj. So my first days at Taj, he was always there.
Right.
But I remember all those phone calls, scheduling phone calls, so.
Yeah, like I said, not necessarily, at 4Kids specifically, but working on Pokémon, 4Kids adjacent. So.
Yeah, and then having the insight at Viz to see what a different kind of anime producing company was like, that's a really cool vantage point to have.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's one of the many people we've had on the show where they go from you included going from one anime distributing company to another, and it being a world of difference.
Yeah. Do you think it would be wrong for me to sneak into his home and steal that Pokemon jacket since I don't have mine anymore? Would that...
No, you're going to... you're going to have to deal...
with my decisions?
Yeah, you're going to... The consequences of just thinking... of thinking too normy. Of thinking that there's...
Right. You're so right. But see, like, remember how OJ stole back his own stuff? Like,
yeah, that didn't work out well for him.
Yeah, that would be a terrible thing for me to go to jail for. But I didn't murder anyone. Let's be honest, that was really...
I wasn't talking about that, but...
No, but I'm saying I feel like they convicted him for that because of his past. You know what I mean?
I never thought I would get into the whole semantics about O.J. Simpson on this podcast, but I will say I think they definitely used that as, let's get him, for sure.
Steve, I think you underestimate where I'm willing to go on this podcast.
Oh, I can't wait to do flashbacks about big news stories of the 90s once we've talked to every single person, 4Kids.
You know what? And that's funny. You know what? I actually didn't bring it up with Norman, but one of my questions that I had on my list for him, there was a lawsuit right when the Pokemon cards came out. And 4Kids wasn't really involved in the cards, but there was a lawsuit because they were saying that the cards were a form of gambling and that they were teaching gambling to children. Do you remember that?
I as a kid, I remember, like, just like newspapers, magazines, and television, like, covering that. And I think maybe I was just in denial. I'm like, nah, Pokemon's great.
I'm not gambling. Yeah. But yeah, because of the way the packs were organized and the randomness of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like gotcha is just a thing now. So it's of course they didn't like nothing came of that, they weren't, 4Kids or Pokemon wasn't successfully sued. It's funny, we're talking about getting rid of like stuff. I gave you crap for the jacket, but I remember the original Pokemon toys that came stateside, the little minifigures. Yeah. I sold those so cheap in like 2000, 2001. Should have. Wow. I thought by then I thought, I'm like, I don't want these anymore. Should have just waited, because now I realize, I do want those. I still want them.
My biggest regret, and forgive me if I've told this on panels, but I don't think I've said it on this podcast. I had a big collection of stuff from the back in the day, and they came out with that Pokemon cereal, which was very exciting because I played Oddish. And Oddish was a marshmallow shape. And I was like, I am a marshmallow shape. This is the pinnacle of my career. I saved the cereal box. At a certain point, when I was like moving to LA from New York, my parents helped me clear out my apartment. and I wasn't there. And they said, "Oh, we threw out that box of cereal. It was expired."
I am so lucky that my parents have, not thrown out my stuff. They're gracious enough to know, no, me and my brother are huge dorks, and I think we still value a lot of stuff from our childhood. So,
and this was the only thing. Like, they kept everything else that they thought might have personal value. I don't think they understood that. I mean, I think if Oddish wasn't on their radar. So, So I've actually looked on eBay to look for that cereal box.
Now it's
just replace.
I think it really, like, in a post-COVID world, so many people got into collecting because a lot of people struggled to keep money coming in during the pandemic, and then there was the people who had too much disposable income. Yeah. So now it's just like used games, old toys, everything now is so overpriced.
Screwed up the prices of everything.
Yeah. And some people now, it's like them being an entrepreneur, their business is just selling old toys and stuff at shows and stuff. It's hard now. So
I boxed up my major collection of Pez dispensers, and I should have, during that time, I should have really taken all that out or sold it as a full collection at a certain point. But whatever. I'll have it for my great-great-grandchildren. They don't want it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so you guys, here's something you should do as soon as this is done. You should go to 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4. There you can find all the links where you can subscribe to the show on different podcast channels. You could go to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. What happens there, Steve-O?
Well, let's say this is the first episode you listened to. Or maybe you've listened to us enough where you're like, you know what? I'm hankering for more.
Don't press stop right here. He might say something stunning and different this time. So don't stop the podcast right here.
Get this. Nah, it's more of the same. But if you subscribe to our Patreon, kick us back a little bit of money, you could get some cool perks like ad-free episodes a week early, and access to some other bonus content that we'll have there for you.
That sounds delicious. You guys do that. You can subscribe, rate, and review, because that's the kind thing to do. I would say it's what Jesus would have done. Am I not allowed to say that on this podcast?
It would be controversial, maybe. I don't know.
It could be controversial.
Nothing phases anybody anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be a good person, you should subscribe, rate, and review. Tell 4 friends.
That's a little bit of peer pressure. Yeah.
I am not above an after-school special kind of peer pressure.
I mean, we're talking about shows that were just they were doing everything to tell you to buy the merch without saying it outright. But yeah, what's us, putting on the pressure?
You know what I should really say? It's not what Jesus would do. It's what OJ wouldn't do. And on that note, thank you for listening, and
we'll catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4kidsflashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.